All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to get started here today. Welcome to the State Fair in the Minnesota GOP booth. It is Military Appreciation Day at the State Fair today. If we could take a minute and recognize the veterans of this great country. We have a special panel for you today, an opportunity to spend some time talking about our military and about veterans issues in the United States and also here locally. We've brought a great panel of Republicans from across the political spectrum in the party, as well as the geographic area of the state together to the State Fair today to talk about our military and some of the issues of the day. We're going to start first with introductions. We've got about an hour here, and so I'm going to ask the panel to go through and introduce themselves. I'll start with that. My name's Adam Gilbertson, and I'm currently the Deputy Finance Chair for the state party, as well as have the opportunity to serve as the Deputy Chair for CD2 out of the South Metro. Go CD2. I had the opportunity to serve in the military for 9 years. I was an officer in the infantry and spent 16 months in Iraq commanding one of our Minnesota Guard units out of the 34th Infantry Division, Red Bull Division, in Iraq in 2005 through 2007. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Bruce Anderson, Senator Bruce Anderson, for introductions.
Well, thank you, Adam. I appreciate the opportunity to be here, and I really appreciate the recognition for veterans, especially the Red Bull unit, celebrating their 100th anniversary here at the fair. And we had recognition, thanks to Representative Bob Detmer and others, to present a resolution to the Red Bulls this morning at the Lining Lodge and recognize their efforts and the fact that they've always been here for many, many years. 100 years is a long time, and for them to keep going forward and to answer the call, and we appreciate that. So just to recognize the fact that we're here, I'm Senator Bruce Anderson. This is my 5th year in the Minnesota Senate. I had the opportunity and the privilege, the honor to serve our country. Joined the military in 1970, U.S. Navy for 6 years. I was out as a Navy person. I served on an aircraft carrier, the USS Forrestal, and was an aviation electronics technician on board ship. And I got out for 13 years and felt the call for coming back. Looked at my retirement check and didn't look so good, so I thought, well, the military is a good place for us to serve, and also to see a good retirement and to benefit families. Family had a great opportunity to see what our military does and continues to do. So I joined back in to the Minnesota Air National Guard in 1986. I did 20 years with the Guard, and I was an air cargo specialist. And I seen more of the United States and of the world than I did when I was in the U.S. Navy. And you think, well, join the Navy and see the world, but no, the Air Force took me a lot farther. And then with the influx of new people coming in after 9/11, my commander said, "You've got 20 years in the Guard. Appreciate your service, but we're asking you to leave." So I called an old E8 not tech sergeant, but a first sergeant over at the 934th U.S. Air Force Reserve, and I joined there for another 5 years and finished out a 30-year career with the military. And I really enjoyed it. If I had another 10, 20 years to do it, I'd probably still be there, but I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
Wow. I don't know if I can top that. That's pretty impressive record of service. My name's Lloyd Cheney. I'm currently the chairman of 2nd Congressional District Republican Party down there with Adam. We are leading the state as I always call us the tip of the spear, because we're leading the state party forward. My military career, I did 20 years in the Army Guard. I started off in 1986 as an enlisted person. I went green to gold, if anybody knows that program. I did my ROTC at St. Cloud State University, and after 2 years I was commissioned under the early commissioning program. I was a military officer for 8 years, and I was back on active duty, came off active duty, and got stuck in the reserves at Fort Snelling and wanted to come to the National Guard again for an AGR slot. Well, the reserves were so short officers that they said no. So I vacated my appointment and took off my bars and put on sergeant stripes again and went as a production recruiter for the National Guard and was a production recruiter from 1999 through 2002. And then from there I went to a line unit and got pulled from there to go to the 30th Enhanced Separate Brigade in North Carolina and was with the 1st Infantry Division in Iraq from early 03 through early 05. So 391 days in country. And had a little trouble with a bomb, but I'm all better now. So, but I'm glad everybody's here. I'm glad to be here on the panel with all these amazing veterans.
Good afternoon. I'm State Representative Bob Detmer. I chair the Veterans Division in the House of Representatives, and along with Senator Anderson and I, we chair both ends of the committee in the Veterans and Military Affairs, and I can say that through this last session we got 29 pieces of legislation through and signed by the governor for our veterans and our military affairs. Myself, I'm a retired CW4 Chief Warrant Officer, and no, I did not fly helicopters. A lot of warrant officers fly the helicopters. I tell the warrant officers that fly the helicopters and other officers that my job is to tell you not to fly in different areas you might get shot down. So my job in the military was to identify enemy radars, associate them with weapon systems, and that's what I did during my term. Also, I came in as a enlisted soldier, and then I went to Warrant Officer Candidate School and then became a warrant officer and then retired after 25 years as a CW4. Now I have to also share with you, my wife and I have twin sons that graduate class of 2000 from West Point. They are currently, they are currently lieutenant colonels. And so when they come home with the grandkids, I tell my sons, well, I'm commander-in-chief when your mom's not there. So we're very proud of our sons. Rob, they both have had 4 deployments in Iraq, Afghanistan. Rob, who's out of Fort Hood, Texas area, he's in Afghanistan as we speak. Should be back home with his family in Texas sometime around Thanksgiving. His twin brother, Travis, he's out in Washington, D.C. His next duty station when he leaves there will be Fort Stewart, Georgia. He's a public affairs officer, and his brother's a military intelligence officer. But prior to my civilian job, I spent 34 years as an educator, a teacher, and coach. Head wrestling coach at Forest Lake High School, also coached soccer and track, and taught in the physical education department. The other committees that I serve on, I'm on the State Government Finance Committee because the division falls under the State Government Finance. I'm also on the Tax Committee and the Ways and Means Committee, so and the Capital Investment Committee. Right now, the Capital Investment Committee, we're touring the state, looking at all the bridges and infrastructure things that need to be repaired around the state. So that's another committee that I serve on. So hopefully we can share some things with you today, and I'll turn it over.
And he was also an All-American wrestler in college.
Hard to top that. I can't say that for myself, but I'm very happy to be here. My name is Donna Bergstrom, and I drove all the way down from Duluth to come here to this wonderful panel discussion today. I'm a retired Marine. I spent 21 years on and off active duty in the Marine Corps. Retired as a Lieutenant Colonel in 2010 up in the Duluth area. So I had the opportunity to enter the service through the Officer Candidate Program, and we started out with about 97 women and graduated 22. So I'm very happy to be one of the few that proud the Marines. And I served primarily on intelligence assignments, and so I had the pleasure of working with the National Security Agency, the National Reconnaissance Office, some of our congressional offices in understanding how our intelligence community should be shaped for the future. Also, I had a tour with Senator Barbara Mikulski as her military liaison in a nonpartisan role. So I got to see a little bit of how what they call the sausage being made up there on Capitol Hill. Spent about 6 months working there. That was really an opportunity to learn how our federal policy is shaped. When I came back here to Duluth and retired with my husband and son, we settled in the area, and I took a look around and I said, okay, this is a nice place to be, but who hijacked my America? Because there are a lot of things that were different from when I was growing up. So I got myself involved with our political community up there. I'm a member of the Duluth Republican Women. I'm also the co-chair for our local unit, 7A. And last year I ran for state senate, representing the Republicans from that area. So I appreciated getting out and meeting our community and talking about the issues that are near and dear to us as Republicans. And currently I serve as a board of directors for the Military Officers Association up in Duluth, the head of the Lakes chapter. So thank you.
My name's Dan Hall. I'm the senator from the Burnsville area. I'm honored to be here with all these men and women, but I am not a military vet. My father was World War II Army serviceman, and I was given a 4F as I was drafted into the Army. So I did not serve. My experience, besides sitting on the Veterans Committee, and I think the reason they wanted me was mostly because of my appreciation for veterans. My first job was in the Veterans Hospital, and I was 16, maybe 15, maybe I lied about my age, maybe I was 14, and I fed veterans that couldn't feed themselves. They were either mentally incapable as they came back from Vietnam, or they had lost limbs. So that was really my first experience. But I'm greatly appreciative for all these men and women do.
We're going to start out. I have the honor of being the moderator, which means I get to ask the tough questions and then let everybody else answer them. So today we're going to, in light of time, maybe ask the two or three address each question, and unless you're really compelled, there's something you feel we need to grab onto, then we'll move to the next one. And I'll start with Senator Anderson. The first question, as a veteran, what are the principles and values that made you choose to be a Republican?
My phone just went off, so I'm saying, uh-oh, someone's calling. Before I answer that question, I just want to add on to what Bob had just said regarding his sons being in the military. I have a daughter that's serving. She's just went over 22 years with the Air Force and is stationed in Lakenheath, England. And she's in intelligence, so when I ask her what she does, she said, "Dad, I can't tell you." Because you know what the alternative is. And I go, I don't want to go there. Well, I think the principles of being a Republican are the fact that honor, respect, duty before oneself, reaching out to those people, realizing that what a Republican is there for is to honor those that you have been asked to represent, whether you're just a lowly caucus member selected from your caucus to go on to the district convention or on to the CD6 convention. You're there to honor and help one another out. And so the principles of my bringing up in the church and being respectful and honor, and the 10 Commandments is I got hanging in my office, so I'm reminded every day those things that I think Republicans should be aware of and keep in the back of their minds as they deal with people, deal with their wives and their children and anybody that they have opportunity to meet. So it's those principles that we carry with us and guide us, and they carry not only as a Republican but as a military person, as an individual, as a civilian for that matter, but it's very important to me.
Thank you very much. Representative Detmer?
Hello. Number one, when I decided to run for office, all those years that I coached, and I always had a theme for my teams that I coached. And I asked my wife, I need to have a theme for running for office. She said, well, all those years that you taught and served your community and your athletes, you're a servant there. All the years that you served in the military, you're a servant. You served your country, you served your state. Then she told me one thing that I'll always remember, and I'll keep close to my heart, is that she said, if you go down to the legislature not being a servant, then you're there for the wrong reason. And I think if you take a look at our platform as a Republican Party, not just the social issues of being pro-life and pro-marriage, one man, one woman, but also being a servant. And I think we need to always remember that we are elected for a reason by our constituents, and you have to be a servant. So I would say that's one area that we are very well versed on in the military, is being a servant. So,
very good.
Well, I'd like to say I was a Republican long before I joined the military. I think my first campaign was here. I worked for Senator Durenberger's campaign at one of his booths here. So that was a lot of fun. I was in high school at the time. And then I went to the university here, the Maine U, and was recognized in the alumni magazine as one of the conservatives on campus. So I have held those values. That's how I was raised. But in addition to that, I want to point out that I'm also an enrolled member of the Red Lake Nation, so I bring a Native American perspective to it. And one of the things that always strikes me as odd is, our traditions are valued within our community, and we don't have a word for abortion or for dissolving of families because we think children are sacred and life is sacred. And when I look at the Republican platform and compare that with the Democratic platform, I can't figure out why everybody else isn't a Republican who holds those values true to their heart too. But in addition to that, veterans, the military in particular, the Native community serves in higher percentages according to their population than any other population. So I'm proud to represent our communities too in that area.
And if I could just add, and I agree with these guys, because honor and respect is such an important thing these days. But the military also represents law and order. And I really appreciate that. They know the right and the wrong in life. And they're willing to stand up and even die for what they believe in.
Very good. Thank you, Senator Hall. We're going to turn now, and we're going to start with Chairman Cheney. This country has been at war now consecutively since 2001, the longest time period in the history of this country where we've seen continuous conflict. One of our most hallowed and important tasks is to take care of our veterans when they return from war. And currently, I think it might be an incomplete grade that we'd give the Veterans Administration on that task. What do you think needs to be done to continue to focus both at the federal and state level on ensuring our veterans as they return from war can come back and be a very valuable part of the community?
I give you a little background on the VA. The VA employs over 340,000 people. It's 2 times the size of the Marine Corps. It has a $180 billion annual budget, and it's the second largest department in our government. And that we probably say, well, that sounds impressive, right? So it runs over 150 hospitals and 1,400 community clinics across the nation, and it serves 7 million patients. That's 1/3 of the total 21 million veterans alive today. And given that, the VA has pretty much been an abysmal failure for many veterans. It has a corrosive culture, high wait times, poor health care, systemic problems, and that last bit is actually a quote from the Inspector General that was hired in the Obama administration. And unfortunately, that's led to deaths of veterans across the country, and the past administration his answer to that was to throw basically huge amounts of money at the problem. And they end up hiring about 100,000 new employees over the last 8 to 10 years. And the result of that is that VA wait times actually have gone up. And no one actually was held accountable for that situation. So in the wait time scandal, no one was actually fired. I think somebody retired, but that was about it. So my solution is that it's not more government, it's not more money, it's not more bureaucracy. It's more competition and more accountability and more transparency in the for the VA. So I want to let the money follow the veteran. We need to give veterans vouchers to use at their healthcare provider, either private, their choice, private or government, and they would then control their own care, and that would create a healthy competition between private sector and public. Again, I just want to reiterate, those who can afford not to use the VA do not use the VA.
I'd like to open this up now to our elected officials, since you've got quite a bit of experience on this topic, and talk a little bit about at the state level what we're doing to address some of these issues.
Well, at the state level, you know, when you talk about the VA, that is federal. It's federal. And I've talked to a lot of veterans, being that I chair the Veterans Committee. We've had a pretty good record here in Minnesota. And you can't say that about other states. But I think it really comes down to leadership that you have that are managing these homes, the leadership in Washington. Those are types of things that we got to really look at. And if people aren't doing their job, they should be out the door. And so leadership is important at all levels. And from what I've heard from veterans that have making use of our VA here in Minnesota, that they've been pretty happy. So I really believe that it comes down to leadership.
Well, Bob, I have to agree with you, because I have a neighbor who really feels that the VA has done wonders for him, because he drives in. But when they tried to open up things to allow them that if they lived you know, outside within a certain amount of time distance from the VA hospital, they tried to open up so they could go to their local hospital or local clinic. They found a lot of resistance from the private sector allowing TRICARE or the VA to come into play. So I hear both sides of the equation. I hear a gentleman who has gone all the way from Buffalo to St. Cloud, and then when they came in with this new program to try out to allow local people, well, within a short distance. I mean, he's only 3 miles from the local clinic. To go there, he's thrown his hands up, because the bureaucracy that has been thrown into the mix, along with the private and trying to get reimbursement from the VA, has just been a quagmire. So not only did my neighbors say that, but every other veteran that I've talked with in and around the Wright County area that's been trying to use this program, it's not working. So there's got to be some more things that have to happen. And I think, as was mentioned earlier, the voucher system is a good opportunity to free up and allow these veterans to get the help they need. If they can't get it at the VA, then they should in turn be able to get a voucher to say, I can get it here, I can get it here, and use the finances that they were promised when they went into service to serve our country. So I appreciate that voucher, and I think that's a good idea.
Colonel Bergstrom, you have something to add?
Yes, thank you. I just want to speak to the veterans here that haven't applied for their benefits. I am just now navigating the VA system, and that's after 7 years of having retired. And the reason is I looked at myself and I said, you know what, I'm pretty healthy. I don't need to use the VA. That's fine. And last year I met our county service officer, Sherry Rodriguez. She's wonderful. And she said to me, why aren't you applying for these benefits that you've earned and that you deserve? And I said, well, I don't want to take away from somebody else who really needs them. And she said, you're not taking from somebody else, you're taking for yourself. And that's exactly how it works. You take for yourself what you need, and the system supports that. So don't be afraid to apply for it if you haven't, and I appreciate these comments that were made. I would also add that, you know, we have service providers that have stepped up and will serve in the overflow for the VA, but it takes them months to get reimbursed, and some of these are small businesses that can't afford to wait to pay off their bills. So if there's any way we could help that, I think that would really be helpful to our small businesses in getting care to our veterans.
We're going to turn now to military readiness. Over the last few months, there have been reports out of the Air Force about our flight combat capability. The United States Navy has had a number of major international incidents of collisions, and our Army has been taxed with their force readiness. President Trump, on taking office, announced a $54 billion increase in military spending to try and address some of these issues. The question I'd leave you with is this enough to address the current shortcomings in our readiness? And if not, what else should be done? Whoever would like to start.
I will just say the world is about as unstable as I've ever seen it. So there are some great concerns there. I don't look at the budget of the federal budget for the veterans, but whatever it takes to make our country safe and secure is what we need to do. In the past, we've gone up and down with that, but I think we have a president that understands if this isn't enough, we'll give more, and I appreciate that.
I would just add that the number one responsibility of the federal government is to defend the United States, to make sure that we are consistently existing here. And so if this is what it's going to take, I think that is what we need to do, is put money and policy behind lining up our strategic goals with our missions.
I guess I could add is you can't put a price on freedom. I look at the wars that we've gone through. Our opponents or our enemies would always come after us when we're weak. And I guess you can look back to President Reagan. When he took over, he built up our military, and he showed the world that we are forced to contend with. But we can't be the law enforcement of the world. But we do have to be strong, and and then there's no price you can put on freedom.
Yeah, I would like to add, kind of echoing peace through strength. We are the department, we all work for the United States military in one branch or the other, but we're the Department of Defense, not the Department of Offense. And I think too often we have to kind of reevaluate a little bit. I'm certainly for it. You can't put a price on freedom and eternal vigilance, all that kind of stuff. It's absolutely the truth. That said, we have to be fiscally responsible. And I, for one, am a big proponent of auditing the Pentagon. We really need to get a handle on where the money is actually going and if it's actually getting to the end user, which is the, Private Jane and Private Joe, and if they're getting what they need, rather than spending X amount of dollars on contracts that are like 9 goats going to Afghanistan for a Kashmir project that was like $10 billion or $10 million, and then the goats ended up being lunch. So I mean that really happened. So there's problems like that. So I think we need to get a handle on spending first to find out where it's going. But then, yeah, we need to look at and I would propose auditing the Pentagon before the next NDAA.
Well, thank you. I really think that if we look back at what Reagan did with building up our strength through the military, that I think the new administration is trying to rebound from the last 8 years that we've been dealing with an administration that wanted to see the military be downgraded, and the new administration, I think, trusts his superior officers, and I think that's important because each one of us has a job, and if you have everybody looking over your shoulder every time you do something and they can't trust you, then all of a sudden you're saying, well, what am I doing here? And I think the new administration, President Trump, is looking at his military people and saying, I think I've got the team that needs to do the job. If I need to have money to build this up or to reorganize what has to happen, I think the trust in his team and in his military organization is very important. And that's a key to having a strong military, is trusting those in command and those who are running and overseeing our troops.
Thank you. I'm going to start with Chairman Cheney again one more time, since this is about political involvement. There may be some veterans in the crowd here who are interested and care a lot about the future of this country and the future of this state, but may not be quite sure how do you get involved in the process. So what advice would you have on how to get involved and start to make a difference on your own?
Well, that's exactly what I did. I came off, retired from the military and from the Army, and I wanted to get involved. I wanted to serve my country again, and I found a way to do that. It was actually through politics, and I started getting involved in my local BPOU, or Basic Political Organization or Operating Unit, and that's your Senate district. Find out, go on their website, find out what time they meet, and then we have caucus. When's caucus? February 6th. Get involved in caucus. Become a delegate to the BPOU convention, and then run for delegate for your CD convention, your state convention. Get involved that way, and actually, you know, getting involved at the grassroots level is huge from the BPOU perspective. But also get involved in groups like there are plenty of, you know, liberty groups, Tea Party groups, you know, Minnesota Republican Women Federation or Federation of Republican Women. There's different affiliates. I mean, there's a veterans group, More Vets. There's a lot of help out there, and you know what? You can give me a call. You know, so I'll give you out my number after the thing. If you need a card, I'll give you it.
Well, I would like to see more veterans, men and women, who have served and know what servanthood is all about, run for office. We have, I believe, Senator Anderson, we have maybe 8 or 9 serving in the House and the Senate combined that have served in the military. I would like to see many more people that have served, men and women, to get involved in the Republican Party and come in and run for office. And I think that's important, that people that are serving in the legislature, not only at the state level but the federal level, to have an understanding what military and what freedom is all about and why we have a military.
Okay, let me just add, getting involved in your caucus is really important. Running for office is important, but you can get on a campaign team and help campaigns. I mean, walk in parades, be an advisor to the team. You got a perspective as a vet that a non-vet doesn't have. We're always looking for people. Veterans are kind of like, they remind me of farmers. When I look for somebody that wants to work hard, I find a farmer. They know how to work. Veterans are like that too. They have certain principles that we've talked about, that they know how to stand up and do the right thing, and that's really important. They take orders. They don't mess around. They're really dependable people. So the other thing you can do is give. You can give financially. Right now the PCR program is up. You can give $50 if you're a voter from Minnesota and get all your money back. I mean, what a deal! You can't have a better deal than that. So it's really important to get involved. There are guys like me and anybody else that's running that are always looking for people to join our team. Put up a sign in your yard. As easy as that is, it's very important, because people that respect you will respect whose sign is in your yard.
Oh, thank you very much. President Trump, a week ago, announced our new strategy for Afghanistan. We've had a little bit of time to kind of let that settle in, and I'd like to see if we could get some initial reactions on the new direction. Yep.
I don't know if I might I guess God, it's easy for me to say, right? I might meet resistance here, but this is probably my more lean libertarian side coming out.
This might be a great time to talk about the Big Tent party that is the GOP.
Right.
And how there are lots of different opinions.
Right, exactly. So I come from the perspective, and this is a veteran's perspective of actually, you know, putting rounds on target and you know, putting people down in Iraq, and I have brothers that were in Afghanistan too. So just a little history here. I took some notes that Afghanistan, of course, is our longest ever war, 17 years now. You know, next year's budget, we have $43 billion put away for Afghanistan in next year's budget, and that's as much as Great Britain spends on its entire military. So I'll say that Afghanistan has been called the graveyard of empires, and we have spent trillions of dollars there. We spent $8 billion there against, let's just say, growing the poppy, you know, the poppy production for heroin. We've been doing interdiction there, $8 billion. And in that time frame that we've been there, population has doubled, or the production has doubled. And we're really not trying to do any interdiction and cut production because that would irritate the government. That's their economy, right? So recently, Representative Tom Massey of Kentucky said he asked the Inspector General if they could just spray some Roundup on this poppy production and just kill it. And the Inspector General goes, of course, it'd be the easiest thing in the world to do. Simple answer is, that's a simple answer, but that would disrupt their total economy. And also agitate the Taliban into more action. And the Taliban has really never gone away. So, in addition to the trillions of dollars in military spending, we spent $100 billion in infrastructure on there, $100 billion approximately. And so in our highway trust fund, that's about $50 billion a year. So in 2 years, what we spent in Afghanistan, just think of, not to say that highway trust fund dollars are spent elsewhere, because they are, but if they were actually spent on highways, just think of how much infrastructure we could have. So in short, I really think that we really need to have an exit strategy in Afghanistan, and it needs to be part of an overall structure. It doesn't support the principles of war going in. We've changed, strategy how many different times. We need to have an effective strategy, and I have yet to see one.
Well, number one, our military is trained to win wars. And we shouldn't be having to be spending 17 years in Afghanistan if we would have done it the right way. Go in there and do our job and get out of there. That's why we have our military. We can't be a police force, as I mentioned before. We, my wife and I, we have one son there right now. I would love to have more troops in there now and do the job and get out of there. And we're not supposed to be around there just to train other armies, even though we're doing that, but we're supposed to do what's right for America. Thank you.
And those were my words exactly. And what I would like to add is that, our troops go over there to fight and win, and they are given an objective. And if they don't know clearly what the objective is, you're not going to ever win. So we need to have a clear objective articulated.
We're going to turn now to the issue of suicide in the military. And for me, it's one that's near and dear to my heart. This summer, I'll celebrate my 10th anniversary from returning from Iraq with the Minnesota Red Bull Division. Since that time, 2 men in my 168 men company have committed suicide. And it's a very real challenge in our service, and something we're seeing to the tune of about 22 veterans a day taking their own lives after they leave the service. This is a federal issue, certainly, but it's also a local, community, and state issue. How can we address this issue and start to turn that tide with our veterans returning from combat?
Well, I would just like to articulate what a colonel had told us one time at a stand down, and that is suicide is an equal opportunity employer. It cuts across gender, race, economic status, anything. So don't just think it's this person or that person. It can happen to anybody. And one of the effective ways to curb it is to reach out to our veterans, to really see to their needs and let them know that they're welcome again in the community. And when we say we're going to hire a vet, put that on our slogans, let's mean it. When we have veterans that come in, let's look at our employment rate right now. I think veterans are topping out over the general population. So let's take care of our veterans when they come back. And we have organizations like the 23rd Veteran, which raises money to help have activities to help folks that are struggling. So I think we really need to look at suicide as a prohibitive factor for our veterans to really enjoy their retirement years.
And nationwide, if you take a look at the population of that 22 per day, that's the majority of those are from our Vietnam War veteran era. They were not welcome home like our veterans are today. I know I've spoke at several welcoming home events for our troops coming home today, and who's always there? The Vietnam vets are there, and they're there with their motorcycles and their leather and the flags. The Patriot Guard are there to support our troops coming home, and I've talked to some of them. They said our veterans will never come home like we had to come home. And but I think our local units, when we come home, I know when I came home, my unit didn't do a lot to get us back into the civilian frame of mind. And I think that needs to be done a better job with just the local units when you're coming back. I mean, most guys and gals are ready to get back home, and they don't want to be sitting around in classes and stuff, but I think some of our National Guard and our reserve units are doing a better job with the reintegration program. I know Chaplain Morris did a great job with the integration program with our troops coming home. So.
Well, it's a big problem. It's been before the military, even when I was still serving. Every time we would deploy and then come back home again, there was always that briefing to watch for your buddy. Make sure you had a buddy system. Make sure that you took care of one another. But right now, since I'm out, I have been hearing lately at the Capitol and prior to that there is an outfit that has come to the Capitol looking for some help to reach out to veterans who are in that situation of maybe their mental state is not so good. It's a group called Eagles Healing Nest out of Sauk Center, and I had a chance to go up and visit that place in March of this year. Talked to a gentleman who's from the Buffalo area. I didn't realize his story until I talked to the lady, Melanie Butler, and she told me that she got a phone call at 2 o'clock in the morning saying that a buddy of his was thinking about taking his life because he was drunk, but he was through with life. He didn't like and he's a veteran. And Melanie got in her car, drove to Buffalo, got there at 4:15 in the morning, stayed with him until 8 o'clock and convinced him that he needed to come back to the Eagles Healing Nest in Sauk Center. He was there in March, and this was back in November of last year when this happened. And he's so grateful that someone took the time to care. I think we need those veterans who are aware of the symptoms or aware of the concerns of their friends and their neighbors, that they take interest in them and make sure that they know of these opportunities to get help for the individuals. I also think that, as Representative Detmer and I heard, we have what they call a MAG meeting, Military Action Group, that we meet at the Capitol off session about every 4 to 6 weeks. During session we meet every 2 weeks. But this last MAG meeting that we had, there was a lady from Fergus Falls who came down to tell us about her son who came back from Afghanistan. He was recognized as having PTSD. He went through like a 4-month in-house in a hospital, got help, thought he was doing well, and was taking his medications, and all of a sudden dropped off his medications, and there was no more communication there until one night at 9:30 at night. They got a phone call, got a knock on the door, and it was his son that came there to ask if he could use the laundromat in his own house that he grew up in to wash his clothes. And his mother said, "Sure, that's fantastic. Your father's already gone to bed, and I'm getting ready to take a shower. We'll talk after you get your laundromat." And the next thing she knew, while she was taking a shower, she heard a bang, bang. And what had happened is he had gone up and shot his father while he was sleeping because of his PTSD. He thought he was trying to hurt his mother. And now she's lost his mom. She's lost her son and her husband because of PTSD, and he's in St. Peter right now. But these are things that we need to, as legislators, see these kind of opportunities, or people that want to reach out, like the Eagles Healing Nest and other outfits like Ms. Bergstrom mentioned, to help these people. And we in the legislature have got some opportunities to meet their needs. We've provided a grant for the Eagles Healing Nest this last session, and hopefully we'll continue to reach out to them and make that available. If you ever get a chance to go to Sauk Center, or you're on 994 heading west, get off on the exit there, and it's only about a half mile north of there. And it's a fantastic place to see. An old facility that was used for taking care of women that it was like a prison for women back in the 30s and 40s, and they converted it over now to helping veterans with mental problems coming out of the service. So I think we need to be very aware of this and make equal opportunity, make a concentrated effort to reach out to these men and women, because it's not only the Afghanistan people coming back, but it's the Vietnam veterans. I just talked to a Vietnam veteran last week. He said he knows of a gentleman who is just now getting help, and he's 90 years old, had PTSD all this time, and is just finally went to the hospital to get recognition of that.
Thanks, Senator Anderson. I would agree with that. I also wanted to say, I think the number one thing is just to emphasize over and over and over again that we care about our veterans. And caring means a lot. There's not really a lot we can do with legislation to show we care. There are some things like the groups you were talking about, that Eagle's Nest, I think is one of them, that we can help support. But most of it's every individual in your jurisdiction. What can you do to show honor and respect to every veteran out there, to say you care about them, you appreciate what they've done, and you'll do whatever it takes to make them whole again. And too many of them hide, and they're humble people, but we need to pull them out. If you see a veteran that needs help, be willing to say something. I think would be really important.
I'd just like to add on just a little bit about that. Just that they need your, and we, I had a good friend that we had to basically intervene, and we talked down, and he's doing well now, but we have to empathize with them. We can't we can't give them sympathy and pity and feel sorry for them, or feel like, oh, well, that person has PTSD, like they have the, I don't know, some sort of plague or something like that. They're just people like us, and they just need support system, and they don't have the support system, so let's try to be there for them.
Yeah, very good, thank you. In light of time, I'd like to see if there are any questions from the audience. These tall chairs, right?
My question is these vouchers that are proposed, will they be treated like Medicare payments, where the doctors don't want to serve or treat the people, but have the vouchers, like the doctors don't want to treat people that are there on Medicare? Because if that's the case, then the vouchers aren't doing much good.
Brian, right now the program that they have is actually it's a system where the VA pays. They don't have a voucher system yet. So if we did have a voucher system, the person would go in there and they would receive a. I would hope that this is the way it would work, is that they would just use it just like any other normal insurance card, and the payment would run like normally, like through TRICARE or through CHAMP VA or one of those systems, and they would be paid in a timely manner. That wouldn't be a problem. The problem is right now is that there's some bureaucracy, affecting payment transfers and things like that. Right. No, and that's what we have to eliminate. Right. That's the problem.
Yep. Any other questions from the audience? Okay. If not, we're gonna just wrap it up real quick. If there's closing statements that we'd like to make, and then we'll be done. So if we want to start over with Senator Anderson.
Well, thank you, Adam, for sharing this and being in charge of this opportunity. I hope that those who are here can, if you have further concerns about veterans and want to get more information about our committee, about things that are happening at the Capitol, or in general, veterans from the American Legion to the VFW or others, we are members, at least I am a member of the American Legion. I didn't serve overseas, so I'm not a VFW person, but there are opportunities to serve in veterans organizations, and the more that we can serve those organizations and help them, the more that they can reach out to others who need help, and it's a way to reach out to them and reach out to their families, not just to the vets themselves, but to the families who need support too. Yeah,
I would just segue or dovetail into that a little bit too. As a life member of DAV and VFW, American Legion, but there are other veteran organizations out there that are helping as well. And we do have a Minnesota Department of Veterans Affairs that run a lot of the whole gamut of veteran service centers and county agencies. So in every county there is a bunch of veteran service officers out there. So if you know a veteran in need that is needing something, they can schedule a meeting with them.
Well, I know that this next session, Senator Anderson and I will be looking at some other pieces of legislation for our Veterans and Military Affairs. And I think back in 2016 we passed one piece of legislation that it took, I worked on it 10 years. I know Senator Anderson did too, and so it's about 17 years in the making. We finally got rid of the tax on veterans' pensions. And that piece of legislation, I'm still hearing from veterans even after they did their taxes. I was talking to one lieutenant colonel who did his own taxes, but he didn't read all the new laws that came out. So he's doing another amendment to his taxes. You know, you think about what does a veteran bring into your state. Number one, leadership and service. Most veterans, when they retire, they've got they're in their 40s, early 40s. They've traveled the world, they've served their country. They're going to bring their retirement funds into the state of Minnesota. They're going to buy homes. They're going to start second careers. And that's why we encourage companies, organizations to hire a veteran. They have something to offer. And we want to keep our veterans in our state and provide the leadership that our state needs.
Thank you. And thank you to all the veterans who came today and their families. We can't forget about how important our families are to our veterans as well. So thank you. It was a pleasure to be here today. I would encourage our veterans to get involved. You know, there's many different organizations out there. Whatever your pleasure is, to be involved with that. I encourage you to seek out many of the benefits that are yours. I've already used my GI Bill to get my master's degree, and now, like I said, I'm navigating the waters for the VA Affairs health system, so we'll see how that goes. But really, be proud of your service. You bring that unique perspective that many of our other folks in our communities don't have. So I would just end it with that. Just be proud of all that you've accomplished.
Very good. I haven't got much more except to say run for office. Run for the Senate. I don't really care that much about the House. The Senate is what we need good men and women in. You better run again for the Senate. There you go.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, if you could give this great panel a round of applause as we wrap up. Thank you for your service and thank you for being here today.